Hey guys, I'm Stephanie, and this is Steph Stove. And today I'm going to make something that's kind of extra special. This is a recipe that my grandmother made for me, my brother, and one of my cousins growing up. And truly, I don't know what it actually is other than just a creation specific to her. So this particular recipe is very near and dear to my heart. It's something that I ate a lot as a child, specifically a small child. And it's something that I've passed on the tradition to my daughter, and she has thoroughly enjoyed it as well. My brother, his children love it. My cousin and her children love it. And I wanted to make it especially for her today because she is sick. She is going through some cancer treatment. And this is something that I thought that would warm her heart and soul. So with that being said, let's get to making some bear soup. All right, I'm at my sink because that's where most good things start, because we do have to get our ingredients cleaned and washed. So this particular recipe starts with these very small, and you'll see these are very small. Some people call them red potatoes, but most of the time you'll see these at the store is referred to as creamer potatoes. And as I was a small child, my grandparents, like I said, if you've watched, and I've mentioned them several times, wash these off while we're talking. My grandparents had a farm, and one of the funnest things for my brother, my cousin, and myself, who are extremely close in age, there's about 21 months between the three of us, as we were growing up, and my grandfather, as the potatoes come in, he had always a couple of special rows that he would have right behind the house. And these were just for, he called his little babies to harvest, meaning us three little bears. And we would go, and my grandmother, my mammy, would give us some little spoons, and we would go kind of just till the dirt just a little bit. And he would say, "Be careful, babies. And you can find the little treasures under there." And it was just like a little treasure hunt for us to find all of these little potatoes, and you would just barely sift the dirt to find them. And it was just so exciting to us. And looking back, I think that's why my mammy come up with this, because we were the three little bears, our little three selves, which usually got in trouble when we were all there together. Because as you know, three little minds put together can come up with some crazy things. So we would always kind of play together, and so she would make us a treat out of our potatoes that we had just harvested. Now, after we have our potatoes, we are going to come in, and with a small paring knife, because remember these are small, we are going to cut these in half. So they'll be even smaller. Now you can go, if you're fixing this for smaller children, and some of the potatoes, they all should not be very large. This is not the really big red potatoes. These are the tiny potatoes. You can even quarter them if you want really small pieces. I know as my daughter was much smaller, I would always make her pieces of this small. So for this sake, I'll go ahead and work through these and make these smaller. So we'll get these cut up, and we'll be back in just a minute. All right, now as we've got all of our potatoes cut up, and most of these I did go ahead and dice up into quarters, because some of them, even after I cut them in half, were still a little bit bigger. So I did want them a little bit smaller. So I did go ahead and fourth each of these. So we're just gonna cover this with water, and just enough to cover them. You don't want a lot of water in here, it's not necessary. And we're gonna take this to the stove and get it started. All right, we've got our pot on our burner here, and to my pot, I'm gonna add just a little bit of salt. And when I say a little bit, maybe like 1/8 of a teaspoon, just a little bit for the potatoes, because these potatoes are very mild and tender. And I'm gonna turn my stove on to medium heat, or about 6. And we are gonna let these come to a boil until these are fork tender. All right guys, our potatoes have been cooking for about 12 minutes, and they are extremely tender. So you can see just my fork just presses straight into them. and I can almost mash them. That's how tender I want them. So at this point, I'm going to turn the eye off, and we are going to go drain the water out and continue making our creation, bear soup. Alright, I have drained the water off of my potatoes, and my burner is still extremely hot, so I'm just going to push this to the side right now. And to this, I'm going to add 1 can of carnation evaporated milk. Now, if you have pet milk, that kind of was my Amy's favorite. She always had pet milk. She always had that. So at this point, I'm going to put it back on the eye. I'm not turning it on because the heat of everything will cook it. And so I'm going to put the entire can in here. And I did open this with a can opener of this nature. You will need to always do 2. One for the milk to come out, the other one to create the air holes to kind of vent the can so you can pour it out correctly. And to this, I'm going to add about 4.5 tablespoons of butter. Just going to pop that right down in there. And I'm going to wait, give this just a minute for it to start melting my butter and heat through. I'm going to turn my stove back on to medium low, just because I want just a little heat to return. And I'm going to work this together. And this is, like I said, such a simple creation that my Mammy did for my brother, my cousin, and myself when we were young, kind of to reward us for digging our potatoes. We were like 3 little bears, so I guess, yeah, that's why she always referred to this as her little bear soup, because it was to warm up her little 3 bears and to kind of feed their little tummies. And we always liked it so much. Like I said, I started my daughter doing this when she was small, and she loved it because these little potatoes are just delicious. And when we saw these at the farmer's market, the first thing my daughter said was, "Oh, bear soup." So I said, absolutely. That would make me think of my childhood, my daughter's childhood, and of course, reminded me of my cousin and all the good times when we were growing up. And I know it's something that was special to her as well. So, to this, we are going to add some salt. So I'm going to just kind of add this to taste. And some pepper. And if you want to, you can go in. My Mammy always would take a few of these and mash them to thicken it. And I'm just pressing the backs of my spoon to mash a little bit of potatoes. And again, we're not taking the skins off because the skin is so good. And one thing that makes this little soup, if you'll call it that, so good is these little creamer potatoes. They're so shallow in the dirt. It seems like you can actually taste the dirt. And when I say that, I don't mean gritty dirt, but they have an earthy taste and they are just good. All right, guys. There we have it. Bear soup. I'm Stephanie, and this is Steph Stove. And I hope you'll take an opportunity to really enjoy this creation that was so near and dear to my heart as a child. And enjoy some bear soup. It'll warm you from the inside out, heart and soul. It's simple. You can have it before a meal as a pre-soup. You can just have it as a meal. It's just delicious. So, thank you for listening to something that my Mammy created specially for her 3 little bears. So from one of the little bears to all of you, enjoy.